A fatal accident in Marshall this morning as well. Officials say a Dodge Ram ran into a tree off of East Michigan Avenue and 22.5 Mile. Sheriff's deputies were called to the scene just after 2 this morning and found the car on fire. Investigators are still looking for a cause of the accident, but say the fire was the cause of death. And another car accident this morning. It happened on 44th Street near Burlingame in Wyoming. Wyoming PD got the call around 1 a.m. They have not released the name of the driver or any potential injuries. Unclear if alcohol played a role in that accident. It's a big day for beer lovers in West Michigan. Founders Brewing Company is releasing Kentucky Breakfast Stout. That's where we find Fox 17's Tim Swore. Tim, they are expanding very soon. They're investing a lot of money into this, and they're going to have a whole lot of people there today for a big party. More trouble for Carnival Cruise Lines as another ship in their fleet has issues. According to the LA Times, the Carnival Legend set sail a week ago from Tampa, but had mechanical issues with propulsion and steering that caused them to head for home early. This is the third Carnival ship to have problems within the last few weeks, and the U.S. Coast Guard is now investigating. On Friday, passengers on the Carnival Dream returned home after the ship stalled in St. Martin, reportedly causing problems with elevators and some toilets. The Carnival Elation ran into the same problems as the Legend last week Saturday and had to be pulled back to port by a tugboat. Most people, of course, remember the problems on the Carnival Triumph last month after that ship had an engine fire and had to be pulled back to shore, stranding people for several days. Would you look any stranger than carrying just a bag filled with the poop?
I have, if you've ever had a dog with a urinary tract infection, you have to collect the specimen, and you have to have a thing like that, and I've had to do it, and it's really horrible.
And your neighbors stand and laugh in their window.
And the dog is looking at you like, what are you doing? Get away.
I'm guessing this is the first time ever the phrase dog with a urinary tract infection has ever been said on this couch. At least I hope.
Said it right here, folks.
At least I hope. Number 2, the anti-eating face mask. Once worn, the mask can be padlocked to prevent taking it off. That looks really safe, doesn't it? It was patented in 1982, the year before books about Hannibal Lecter became popular. Well, let's take another look there. Pope Francis I. This is a live look at Vatican City, blessing some of the children. He held his first Mass today. As we said, the Pope is already making a lot of waves for the changes he has instilled in the Vatican already, even though he's only been there for less than a week.
Yeah, that's right. You know what? We will never know exactly how the College of Cardinals reached its decision to name this person, the Archbishop from Argentina, as the new Pope.
Yeah, witnesses to the papal conclave are sworn to secrecy, but as Dan Rivers reports, there are some educated guesses on what happened in those last crucial days before the conclave. Switching gears, a couple in Montcalm County forced to start over after losing their home to a fire, and sadly, they've gone through this sort of thing before. This is the second time the DeGram family has lost their home to a fire in just the last 3 months, and this time they say it's not an accident. Darren Cunningham from Fox 17 spoke with them and has more.
In Europe.
He does not look like a young man doing a keg stand.
He's been there before, apparently.
I can't tell if his buddy there was lighting a cigarette or just giving a thumbs up while holding the tap.
Yeah.
Moldova.
It's
the new spring break hotspot.
So when should you actually leave a voicemail? Do you ever struggle with this? I mean, there's sometimes that you just kind of are thankful that
to
the person
leave a voicemail, one would actually have to call somebody, and I do not do that.
Anybody.
Yeah, well, apparently there are rules in this new digital age. Last week, the New York Times ran an article laying out rules for mobile etiquette. The author said leaving a voicemail was impolite because it wastes the receiver's time to get the info they could have gotten through text. Readers were upset and let it be known. The author also said it was rude to send a thank you text because it takes too long for the receiver to read it. Why should you send a text to give a message but not send a thank you? THX, does that really take a long time?
No, exactly. There's ways around that.
THANKS?
But I think it's nice to, I like thank you. So if you want to thank me, a text is just fine.
It does have a point, though, about the voicemail, because when you see a voicemail, what do you think? Oh, what happened?
Exactly.
Why did somebody actually leave a message rather than just calling back or sending a text? Even I, non-tech savvy and people avoider.
I have 26 listened to voicemails on my phone. Hope it wasn't anything urgent.
What is your reason for not listening to them?
Because I figure if it's, if they want me bad enough, they'll call back.
What if one of them said, hey, you don't need to come in at 2 a.m. to do your shift? Wouldn't you like to get that message?
That's my personal phone.
Oh, your personal,
on my personal
phone.
Yeah.
There had been rumblings off and on over the years about Michigan possibly going right to work, but most people thought it would never happen because the state has such a strong history of union support and membership. That's why so many turned out at the Capitol and on the lawn, even inside the building itself last December. It was one of the final legislative sessions of 2012, and the lawmakers, not the governor, decided to go forward with a plan to put right to work in place. Supporters call it a right to choose whether or not to join the union and pay those union dues, while those against right to work say it's that very membership that keeps workers safe while on the job.
What we find across the country in right-to-work states is that safety standards are weakened, more workers are injured on the job, health care coverage is less, so wages are reduced. So what we'll see is a ripple effect across our economy of a lower standard of living and safety in the workplace for working people.
We already know that 1 out of every 5 jobs created in the private sector in 2012 was created in Indiana. That's an amazing statistic, and that means that Michigan, if we don't pass right to work, we're literally going to have to build a border on our own southern border, or a fence on our own southern border to keep jobs from migrating south.
The opponents of right to work also voiced concerns that there could be some division on the job from those who pay dues and those who do not pay union dues. Now, there'll be a candlelight vigil this evening in Grand Rapids from 5 to 7 to show opposition to that new law. Live in the studio, Tim Doty, Fox 17 News. Bill Self also talking a lot about turnovers. He says Michigan doesn't turn it over very much. We've seen that throughout the Big Ten season. He says they turn it over too much, Kansas. So he doesn't want his team to give Michigan too many extra opportunities to score there. Now, we talked in the previous hour, Kansas lost to Michigan State earlier this year, but they did beat Ohio State. So there's a lot of common opponents here.
And I think it's important, too, you talk about the turnovers. That's been a big part of a lot of these games we've seen over the last few weeks.
We saw it with Indiana last night.
Indiana turned it over. They averaged in the season like 12-something turnovers a game. They had 12 and a half last night against Syracuse, and it cost them.
And as Florida Gulf Coast, Wichita State, LaSalle, teams like that have shown us, you can't take anybody for granted, but I know that John Beilein and Tom Izzo know a whole lot better than to take either Kansas or Duke for granted.
It should be 2 great ball games.
Absolutely. Sarah? Morning, Mike and Sarah. A contentious issue here, and everyone seems to have an opinion one way or the other these days, but it's the opinion of the justices that will have a broad-reaching impact on whether Social Security benefits, pensions, things like family medical leave will apply to same-sex couples. The Defense of Marriage Act was passed in 1996, and its appeal centers on a woman named Edie Windsor. Because her partner was a woman, she had to pay an estate tax bill that was much larger than a male-female couple would have. Now, her home state of New York recognized her same-sex marriage, but the federal government did not. So, does the Constitution's promise of equal protection prevent states from defining what marriage is? The court could make a wide-reaching ruling and strike down state laws that ban same-sex marriage, or they can leave things as is and let state courts deal with it.
This case could be dismissed with essentially no decision, which would mean that same-sex marriage would become legal in California, but there would be no broader ruling for the rest of the country.
One benefit.
You want us to step in and render a decision based on an assessment of the effects of this institution, which is newer than cell phones or the internet?
Court observers think that Justice Anthony Kennedy could be the swing vote here. Whatever the court rules, a decision isn't expected until around June. We, of course, will have more on Fox 17 News at 5, 6, and 10. Live in the studio, Tim Doty, Fox 17 News.